Burnout in practitioners is a very real thing. I have seen a number of practitioners over the years that have ended up with chronic fatigue, ME, fibromyalgia, burnout that we've worked with and supported here at the Optimum Health Clinic. I've also seen practitioners that have recovered from those conditions and then end up going and they weren't practitioners before and working as a practitioner and then noticing the stress load of that. And learning how to manage that and take care of oneself is really, really important. Welcome to Flourishing Friday. Flourishing Fridays is where I share some tips and guidance for those working as practitioners. This is not just for practitioners in psychology and nutrition. You could be working as a doctor or medical practitioner. You could be working as a coach, as a teacher, really people that are in roles of caregiving and support. And that's particularly relevant for this week's video. I want to talk about how do you switch off? How do you ensure your own self-care and your own sustaining really of your own kind of health and well-being when you're taking responsibility for caring for a lot of other people. So I think the first thing I want to say on this is that burnout in practitioners is a very real thing. I have seen a number of practitioners over the years that have ended up with chronic fatigue, ME, fibromyalgia, burnout that we've worked with and supported here at the Optimum Health Clinic. I've also seen practitioners that have recovered from those conditions and then end up going and they weren't practitioners before and working as a practitioner and then noticing the stress load of that. And learning how to manage that and take care of oneself is really, really important. And as an organization with 20 full-time practitioners working in the space, it's something that we are super focused on, and we pay a lot of attention to making sure that our practitioners are looked after, but also they're looking after themselves. I think one of the things that's important to say here as well is that just because you love something, you might be thinking, well, I work as a practitioner, but I love it and it's my passion, and therefore, how is it possible that that's going to be draining? The thing that you love most in the world can still be draining. Think about children. You can love your children and still find them exhausting at times when they're being challenging and difficult, and even when they're not being challenging and difficult, it can still be a drain. And you know, in a sense, it's also true to say that a lot of people that become practitioners have helper patterns. They get into it because they love to help people, they want to help people, and those patterns then become triggered, become provoked, that we kind of get pulled into that and we don't realize that we've gone too far down a path until sometimes we get some real evidence that has happened. So a few things that I think are helpful. Firstly, you have to pay attention to self-care. You have to stay focused on it, and you have to remember that it's something that's really important. You have to walk the talk. You can't just talk to your patients or clients about listening to their body and looking after themselves and not be doing that. One of the things that I think is most helpful as a practitioner is, especially if you do full client days. So my client days, I tend to see 6 clients in a day. And I tend to do that a day and a half, sometimes 2 days a week of blocked out clients. And one of the things that I find is really helpful is remembering to move my body. Moving my body at the start of the day, and that might be walking some of the way to work or getting some kind of movement that way. At lunchtime, moving around between appointments. I often might go to the loo. If I don't really need to go to the loo, I could wait an hour, but it's just the movement and the kind of walking around is helpful. At the end of the day, I will nearly always do some form of exercise after working with clients. That might be in the summer, going for a walk around the woods or the park. It might be going for a swim. It might be doing yoga. If I'm feeling in a period where I'm doing kind of more physical training, it might be kind of doing a gym workout. But when you've been sat a lot and you are taking your kind of, which I guess you're listening, you're giving of yourself, you're holding space for people, that tends to be a lot in the mind and also sometimes in the heart, but we need to move our body to move the energy of that. And simply, you can just spend the whole day being being sedentary. If you work at home, we have a number of our practitioners do a lot of their work from home via telephone or Skype, and that is great in lots of ways. You can be more flexible. If you have kids, you can be much more available to kind of doing drop-offs and pickups from school and that sort of thing. I know that's worked really well for some of our practitioners. And it can be quite a novel thing initially, that you can be in your pajamas at the bottom, but look smart at the top. I'm at the office. I actually am not in my pajamas today, but it's happened on many occasions where it can be quite a pleasure, or to be in kind of, shorts or whatever, and not having to, travel to an office and have all of that. But then it's even more important to change environment, at least at the end of the day, if not some point during the day. And that can be as simple as going for a dog walk, or going for a run, or again, some kind of exercise. But you can go through periods of days of not, and I remember when I was less focused on this earlier on in my practitioner career, and I learned some lessons about this along the way, that I remember I could go sometimes 2-3 days when I was doing a lot of stuff from home and just not leave home. And then you kind of end up really in your head and a bit almost kind of spaced out in a sense, because you're not grounded in your body. So moving the body is really important when you're taking on stuff and you're using your mind and your heart in an intense way. It's also important because it shifts the state that we're in. And I know that when I do clinical work, I go into a certain state. I am partly, I think, supported through many years of meditation practice. I don't really think about much else. I just kind of there in the moment. Sometimes I'm strategically planning where I'm going in the session. Other times I'm just totally, almost unconsciously responding to what's in front of me. But there's a certain state that I go into when I do that work, and that's been trained through many years of practice. But changing state, the most effective way to change state is to move the body. That's one of the other reasons why it's important. Also, if we are feeling impacted by something that we've been working with, either our own materials being triggered, or someone's in a very difficult place and we feel a lot of compassion and care for that, or maybe it's a really complex case and we're just trying to figure it out, and we're planning for a supervision session, we're going to talk to a supervisor and we're going to be talking about it. Then we have to remember to switch off, because the danger can be that we carry our clients home, we carry our clients into our sleep, we carry our clients into what we're doing the next day. And that is almost never of service to anyone. The way to be the most of service to your clients in the time you're with them is to not be with them when you're not with them. The better you get at switching off and letting go, the more resource you will have to be present when you are with them. Switching off doesn't mean you don't care. Switching off doesn't mean that you're not interested. Switching off is your way of holding and supporting you, so you can really be there with and support them. So one of the signs of someone kind of going in the wrong direction with clinical work is they're not letting go of their clients. They're thinking about it too much. And that's not to say that reflection isn't important. Sometimes it's really important to think about a case, or talk to a supervisor, or talk to a colleague. That can be really important. But if we're not letting go of stuff, it's either a sign we've got too many clients, and maybe I'll do a video at some point about how we kind of supervise client loads and how many clients people should or shouldn't take on. But sometimes it's a sign we've just got too many cases. Sometimes it's a sign we're not writing up cases quickly enough. So we have some strong guidelines internally about writing up cases on the same day, partly for memory, partly to get notes out to clients if we're sending things out to them. But also it helps you to let go. So I will categorically always write my cases up on the day, and I will nearly always write my morning cases at lunchtime, my afternoon cases straight away afterwards. In fact, I remember a few months ago and going to a event at one of the kids' schools, and I hadn't finished writing my cases up, and I literally sat on the floor in the street with my laptop on my lap and waited to go into the event that hadn't started to finish writing my cases up. Because for me, it's my closure on the session. It's my way of kind of recording what's happened, any thoughts, reflections, anything I need to follow up, And once it's done, I let it go. So again, discipline around boundaries and writing up and letting go, I think, is also really important. Disconnect feeds disconnect. The more disconnected we get from ourselves and the more we kind of get consumed by the work that we're doing, the more we will choose habits and behaviors that will drive and cause more disconnect. And so if you're noticing that you're not really wanting to connect to yourself, not wanting to do meditation practice, not wanting to do yoga if they're the things that help you, or you're kind of ratty and irritable, that's a sign you need to plug in and connect. And it may just be that things have got out of balance. And that might also be you're not balancing or managing the rest of your life in the way that you need to. So I know, for example, that if I have a heavy client day, I need to make sure that I get at least 7 to 7.5 hours sleep the night before. I often work very late. I like writing late at night. So I can quite often go to bed at 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning. And any chronic fatigue patients listening to this are probably horrified, but when you're healthy and you don't need to worry about those things, then you listen to your body's kind of rhythm. But I will not crank out a really late night if I know I've got a day of patients the next day, because I know my concentration won't be as good. I know that I'm more likely then at the end of the day to kind of feel the emotional load of that. So also learning your rhythm of how you structure your week. I also try to avoid, it happens sometimes and that's fine. I try to avoid the night before a day of clients, a full day of clients. I try to avoid also going out and doing big social things. I notice that I'm not, my wife's much more social than I am. And I notice that I just ground my body better by kind of being in kind of my own space. Whereas at the weekend, we kind of have a pretty busy, active life of things that happen. So it's just kind of learning your rhythm of the different things that help keep you in balance. And that may be different at different times, depending upon other things that are happening. But really going back to the essence of the point that I'm making here, it's really important to switch off. It's really important to move your body. It's really important to not to overly think about and take on responsibility that's disproportionate to what you should be for your clients. And really you have a responsibility to take care of yourself. It's particularly when, I guess I'm at the upper end of kind of cost for people, and that can be challenging. And I consider it an enormous responsibility to give my absolute focus and attention when I work with my clients. And I really pride myself on my concentration and my focus and my clarity. But it's like being an athlete. Then you have to take care of your body and take care of yourself to support that process. So I hope that's been useful. I think with Flourishing Fridays, I'm a little bit kind of finding the kind of rhythm in terms of what's helpful and useful here. I'm also kind of holding in my mind that people listening to this vlog and podcast are not all practitioners, and trying to give tips I think might be useful for if you're on a recovery path post-recovery, and if you're kind of just living in the world of some things that can be helpful. So please share comments and feedback. Tomorrow is Spotlight Saturday. I'm cheating again tomorrow on Spotlight Saturday. This won't be a general habit, but I'm going to talk a bit about the reset program and particularly talk about the video series that should have just been launched. I'm recording this a few days ahead, so I'm assuming it's gone out at this point, on how to reset your nervous system. So I'll give a bit of a insight into that. Thanks for watching and thanks for listening. I hope that has been useful.